So when you saw the decision, when we reported the decision on Sick 'Em 365, what was your reaction?
I thought it, first of all, Smoak, I thought it was the right decision. Let me say that. I thought it was the right one. But I was surprised. I will be honest. I was surprised. But once the day went to Tuesday, I figured that probably was a positive for Blake, because Gary, I thought, would be a pretty quick decision for Coach.
So, JJ, why do you think Blake ultimately should be and is the guy?
I just think it allows for the offense to be a little bit more dynamic. I mean, just it's varied and dynamic. They're going to be able to run the ball. I mean, that's what Coach Grimes does. Coach Mateos coaches the line real well. I think he brought in Coach Baker to coach those receivers up a little bit, and especially when you have young ones. But Blake just has the knack of processing the defense, reading the defense, and then he can activate all areas of the field in the passing game. Wide right, wide left, deep, middle, underneath, and he's pretty accurate. So I just thought the offense was different when he was in the game. And if you remember from last year, it was just different when he came in.
I've heard a lot of takes, analysts that do know what they're talking about, probably a lot more than I do, but about how Gary also was positive when it comes to the running game because he's bigger, more physical, and all that with what he did a year ago. And I get that. But doesn't a better and more effective or explosive passing game help the running game too?
Hey, you're right. You hit the nail on the head. You're exactly right. And I think that the game plans will change some. They will try to protect Blake a little bit. Now, Blake is not a bad athlete. He's a baseball player, but he's not the same type of athlete as Gary Bohannon. He's 6 foot, maybe 6 foot, 6'1", 190. Gary's 6'3", 220. You're just not going to put him in harm's way as much. But he's about Charlie's size. And I think Charlie's issue more so was, he had the head issues. But if you can pass the ball and activate certain areas of the field in the passing game, that then changes the math for the defensive coordinator. And I think a great example was the difference between how Oklahoma State defended us in the first game at home when they played at home, and how they had to defend us the second time they saw us. Totally different.
JJ, I really wish we could have seen a healthy Blake Shapen in the second half of that Big 12 title game and then seen what would have happened in the Sugar Bowl. I'm just curious how that quarterback competition would have been viewed coming out of New Orleans had Blake played in that game. But then again, we don't know what the result would have been. So that will all remain a mystery, and he's won the job now. But looking at the green and gold game last Saturday, just what were some of your major impressions that you took away? Obviously, there was a lot to look for, but what were maybe a couple things that popped most for you?
I would say really offensively, I was really looking at the wideouts. Of course, I was watching quarterbacks. I figured that was going to be the game that, kind of capped it off for Coach. But I was looking at the receivers. I knew we had Hal Presley out. But I didn't know much about Jordan Cameron. Josh Cameron and Jordan Cameron, I always get that mixed up because I got two sons, and one's named Jordan, one's named Josh. But he played well. It's a nice body. I didn't know much about him. We knew about Monterey Baldwin. We knew about a couple of the other ones. But I was really watching the receivers. And then I wanted to defensively, I wanted to see how the young corners, behind Walcott and behind Milton, how those guys look, because they will have to play. And then the last thing for me, because I feel good about our lines, is really looking at our safeties, because I know we're trying to move Christian Morgan around. So, I'm concerned whenever we potentially may have two brand new deep safeties. Football is played inside out. And you got to have, if you're solid inside with the quarterback, center, Mike, and safeties, you're usually going to have a pretty good team.
JJ, it is the last 2 days of April. Football's over as far as practice, spring drills, whatever. There is the offseason and much more. What about Blake Shapen and the time he has? And they know him, the receivers, offensive linemen, defensive players. They know who he's been for the last year or so. What about him getting control of that team as far as the leader? You don't raise your hand. Being named the starting quarterback doesn't mean you're the leader, but how much time do you feel like he has plenty of time between now and August to be able to kind of grab that? Because Gary was known as obviously very special when it comes to that.
Yeah, I would say Gary. I mean, and I haven't gotten to really spend a lot of time with Gary, but he seems to be a very positive, great young man, hard worker, immense talent. I don't want this to minimize the talent that Gary has. I said this, I think, earlier this week. Gary has an NFL arm. We'll talk about who has the better arm strength. But I think Blake, he's been in the system, Smoak. That's what I like about him. He's been there. He competed with Gary last year, didn't come out on top. He played this year in significant, high-leverage moments. That's what helps you secure your spot is this my team or not? Now, you have to do the daily stuff. You got to show up. You got to throw extra. You got to watch more film. You got to be there. You got to be consistent. You can't be a knucklehead if you're a quarterback. You got to be someone who's, everybody may be hanging out, but you're probably hanging out for a little bit and getting out of there. But so he has to do the things he's been doing, and I think he'll be fine. I mean, he's got plenty of time. They all know him. Mm-hmm. And I watch how guys interact, Craig, with with each other. And it looks like they interact pretty well with Blake and really like it when he's successful. And they love Gary when he's successful. So I think he's going to be fine.
Did you see anything that you liked from Kyron Drones or CJ Rogers?
Hey, I think, everybody saw C.J. Rogers. I mean, I had heard about C.J. last year. They talked about they really like this kid from Argyle. I was like, well, who is that, right? And you don't see much of him. But, he launched one where I just was sure there was no way he's gonna be able to get that ball to Bonner. And he threw that thing about a good 57 to 60 in the air. Kyron Drones is still developing. I think you can see Kyron's athleticism. You can see his ability to move around. But he's still developing the pass game. They want to put him on the move. They want to get it, down to single reads, which is fine. I mean, he's a young player as well. So I think those guys are both promising young quarterbacks. But you could tell. I mean, there's a gap. There was a gap between those guys and Gary and Blake. And I think even in the spring game, I thought Blake was a step ahead of Gary. And I think that ultimately is what helped Coach make his decision.
Was the decision with